My friends, today we discuss a very important and a very grave issue, the issue of Freemasonry. St. Maximilian Kolbe was a great hero for Our Lady, the great martyr of Auschwitz, but he was also a leader in fighting against the errors of Freemasonry. And I want to say right from the beginning, the goal here is not for us to hate Masons, it's quite the contrary. It's for us to save Masons. Save them from what? Save them from a false religion, because that's essentially what Freemasonry is. St. Maximilian Kolbe, as a student in Rome, was faced with Masonic demonstrations. One was in St. Peter's Basilica, and on the banners of Freemasonry were the words, quote, "Satan must reign in the Vatican," and, quote, "the Pope will be his slave." And in a later Masonic demonstration, there was an image of the devil crushing the head of St. Michael the Archangel. St. Maximilian tells us, quote, "In the face of such attacks on the enemies of the Church of God, are we to remain inactive? No. Every one of us has a holy obligation to personally hurl back the assaults of this foe." So, in 1917, St. Maximilian starts the Militia Immaculata, the Army of the Immaculate, which is for Marian consecration, to bring back the world to Jesus through consecration to Our Lady, and secondly, to spiritually battle Freemasonry. Now, this is not simply the opinion of one saint. Listen to the words of Pope Leo XIII in his encyclical against Freemasonry, where he will tell us very specifically that Masonry is intrinsically a false religion that is taking the pagan rites of Gnosticism and Manichaeanism and trying to reintroduce them in replacement for the true Church of Jesus Christ. Pope Leo XIII says, and quote, "As our papal predecessors have many times repeated, let no man think that he may for any reason whatsoever join the Masonic sect, if he values his Catholic name and his eternal salvation, as he ought to value them. Let no one be deceived by a pretense of honesty. It seems to some that Freemasonry demand nothing that is openly contrary to religion and morality, but as the whole principle and object of the sect lies in what is vicious and criminal, to join with these men or in any way to help them cannot be considered lawful." Leo XIII goes on to say, quote, "Their chief dogmas are so greatly and manifestly at variance with reason that nothing can be more perverse. To wish to destroy the religion and the church which God himself has established and whose perpetuity he ensures by his protection, and to bring back after a lapse of 18 centuries the manners and customs of the pagans is signal folly and audacious impiety. Neither is it less horrible or more tolerable that they should repudiate the benefits which Jesus Christ so mercifully obtained, not only for individuals, but also for the family and civil society. Benefits which, even according to the judgments and testimonies of enemies of Christianity, are very great. In this insane and wicked endeavor, we may almost see the implacable hatred and spirit of revenge with which Satan himself is inflamed against Jesus Christ." Now, those are extremely strong words by our Holy Father, but it's because Masonry, from its inset, began with an intention to attack the Catholic Church, to attack particularly the authority of the Pope, and that's why we'll see in one of the higher levels of Masonry, in the 30th degree of the Scottish Rite, the individual actually thrusts a lance into a skull with a papal crown on it, yelling "imposter." Now, this is not Catholic propaganda, my friends. This is obtained from Masonic texts themselves and from the Masonic rites themselves. Now, could this be something antiquated by St. Maximilian and Pope Leo XIII? It is not. I want to read you now the declaration from the Congregation for the Doctrine of Faith, 1983, the date of November 26th. This is signed by Cardinal Ratzinger with the approval of Pope John Paul II. Listen to what this says about Masonry today. Quote, "It has been asked whether the position of the Church in regard to Freemasonry has been changed by reason of the fact that there is no express mention of the same in the new Code of Canon Law, 1983, as there was in the previous code, 1917. This congregation is able to reply that the circumstance indicated is due to an editorial policy which has been followed in general in regards to other associations as well, which have likewise not been mentioned inasmuch as they are included in broader categories. For this reason, therefore, the negative position of the Church in regard to Masonic associations remains unchanged, since their basic principles have always been considered irreconcilable with the teachings of the Church, and consequently, membership in them remains forbidden. Now, what was that first part about the old code and the new code? Well, in the 1917 code, there was a specific code forbidding Freemasonry. That's not in the 1983 code, the new code, but it's because Masonry is covered in a broader category of the prohibition of Christians involved in sects. SECTS, these groups of error and fanaticism which have a grave impact on eternal salvation. The document goes on to say, quote, "The faithful who belong to Masonic associations are in a state of grave sin and may not receive Holy Communion." Let me say that again. This is strong. This is the CDF saying not only is it gravely evil, but if you're participating in this, you are in a state of grave sin. You cannot receive Holy Communion. Once again, the faithful who belong to Masonic associations are in a state of grave sin and may not receive Holy Communion. It is further not within the competence of local diocesan church authorities to pass judgment on the nature of Masonic associations in such a way as to derogate from what has been established above. That means that no local bishop or local church authority can say, well, actually Masonry in my diocese is more like a Lions Club. They do good things. They're fine. No, here's the Vatican. Here's the CDF saying no local authority can justify an organization which is intrinsically disordered. And we'll talk about why in just a moment. The Supreme Pontiff John Paul II, in the course of his audience, granted to the undersigned Cardinal Prefect, approved the present declaration. The date is November 26, 1983. The Prefect is Joseph Cardinal Ratzinger. Now, why? Why is the Church so vehemently against Freemasonry? And again, this is not based on exaggerations that have been heard by the Church. This is based on writings. For example, the writings of Albert Pike, the man known as the father of American Masonry, in an 800-page work called Morals and Dogma. In this text, Albert Pike clearly states repeatedly that Masonry is its own religion. And it is a universal religion, and in fact that other religions incorporate error to satisfy the masses, but this is the only religion. Masonry is the universal religion where God has planted on the heart of every individual the truths of this religion. This is against the first commandments, my friend. First commandment. You cannot take a false religion, especially a Gnostic, Manichaean, esoteric religion, and replace it with the truth of Jesus, the Church, and His saving mission. In fact, in 1996, the German Conference of Catholic Bishops came out with a new reiteration of condemning Freemasonry. Why? Because they said Masonry has a false idea of God. God is a clockwork God of the deist. God is not personal. He's not incarnate. And that's another component of Masonry, that Jesus Christ is not divine. So Masons, as Masons, believe Jesus is not divine, that Satan is not a real person. He's just a force created by God, and he's not evil. Also, the secrets that you have to believe and you have to give oaths to support, where you must put the lodge, the Masonic institution, above Jesus, the Church, and family. And I mean specifically there that you take oaths on the three most fundamental levels of Masonry, what's called the entered apprentice level, the first level. Secondly, the craft level. Thirdly, the master mason level. On each of these levels, you take oaths to keep concealed and never reveal Masonry and its secrets. If you do, you agree to have your body torn in two and your bowels removed from you, to have your heart taken out, to have your head cut off. Now, one could say, well, these are just kind of silly things. Well, first of all, my friends, mature men don't make silly statements using oaths. Oaths are powerful. Oaths are important. Oaths are a statement about your very being. Secondly, when they're oaths concealing something against Jesus, the church, your family, that is also a violation of the first commandment. So, deep, intrinsic errors with Masonry. And again, we don't say this to foster a hatred of Masons, quite the contrary. It's to love Masons, to love them out of these errors and the attacks against the church. Ultimately, my friends, you will see that it is Our Lady, the crusher of heresy, that is the ultimate victor over Freemasonry. Why Our Lady? Because as Pope Leo XIII says in his encyclical Humanum Genum, and as St. Maximilian Kolbe says, Mary brings the truth of Jesus and the grace of Jesus, and that's ultimately what crushes error and what brings forth illumination, truth, grace, and peace. And that's why I ask you, make sure you are consecrated to the Immaculate Heart of Mary. Make sure you are proclaiming the full truth about Our Lady and praying for that. St. Maximilian, by the way, in 1923 was one of the earliest promoters for the fifth dogma of Our Lady's role as the mediatrix. Why? Because you don't want to give yourself to someone you don't know. And you want to know that Mary is the mother and mediatrix of all graces so that you can give yourself to her confidently in Marian consecration. So, both to end Freemasonry, but also for the new evangelization, and to bring peace in the world, and to fulfill the message of Fatima, and for personal holiness. All of these are fruits of the proclamation of Our Lady as the co-redemptrix, mediatrix of all grace and advocate. So I encourage you, my friends, pray for that proclamation, consecrate yourselves to our Blessed Mother, pray for Masons that they'll be freed from this bondage, especially Catholics, but all Masons, they may know Jesus in the fullness of His church through the Immaculate Heart of Mary. This is Mark Miravalle saying thank you. God bless you.